What could this Mahomes deal do potentially for Dak, who signed the tender with the Cowboys when he really wanted that long-term security?
Well, I think it could be it could do two things, and this is where I disagree with Swagoo. On one hand, I definitely think it could elevate his stock just a touch, only from the standpoint that the market has clearly been elevated. You got to remember, we're talking about the National Football League here, hard salary cap and all, just like Max religiously points out. But on many, many occasions, when you hear players lamenting about the state of affairs that exist in the NFL, they talk about the money that's allocated to certain positions and how there's but so much money to go around. And so it gives the impression the money isn't there. And what Kansas City is saying to you is, hell yeah, it's there for the right player or what have you. So I think that it could help elevate in that regard. But it's really, to me, along these lines. Patrick Mahomes signs a 10-year deal. If you're Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, or you're any other team for that matter who wants its quarterback, what's wrong in committing to 5 years? Because remember, Dak was hell-bent on 4, according to our very own Adam Schefter. The real issue wasn't necessarily about dollars and cents. It was about the amount of years committed to the team. So when Patrick Mahomes turns around and commits to 10 years, Jerry Jones can then turn around and say, okay, why can't you give me 5? There should be nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And that would be the argument that would be made. So I think in those regards, that's how it would influence Dak Prescott. But I definitely think that Dak Prescott is going to get his money. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to commit to those 5 years. And I think in light of the 10 years that Patrick Mahomes just gave the Chiefs, no matter how much Dak Prescott tries to argue, ultimately, I think he'd commit to 5 years before walking away from a deal just because it didn't end in 4 like he wanted it to.
I don't think this actually affects Dak Prescott.
I'm just
the truth, because in the end, you're going to point to the guarantee. You're going to say, look, yeah, he got $140 million guaranteed. You ain't Patrick Mahomes, Dak. You want to put yourself in the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz category? Fine, but we're kind of offering you in that, not kind of, we're offering you that ballpark type of deal. Like, Patrick Mahomes didn't shatter the market. Even Molly describing it as the richest contract. That is accurate out of, without context, which of course you gave the context. It's not guaranteed. Mike Trout's money's guaranteed. It's a way bigger contract, guaranteed. So there's 140 guaranteed here, but with dead cap issues, if they were to cut him at a certain point, all that stuff, it really is much more likely to be well over $200 million. Dak was already offered a contract in line.
It's 31% of his contract, Max. It's 31% of his contract that's actually guaranteed.
31%.
The smallest percentage among all contracts, $25 million plus. So when we're actually talking, the guaranteed is pretty weak. So you are correct.
Yeah, right. Now he's also not tying it to the percentage of the team's cap going forward, which helps the team. Like, Dak is doing a version of what Tom Brady did. Not exactly, but like, I'm going to get paid, and I want a team around me too. He's smart. I said Patrick Mahomes. I said Dak. I meant Patrick Mahomes. But Mahomes' money is going to be more or less in line. Like, the deal he's being offered now is more or less the deal he's going to wind up signing. I don't think this really affects him.
Yeah, I'm with Max. And Max, to what you were talking about when we had the discussion about the guaranteed money, we just explained it different. I call it fluff money. And outside of that 141, like you've been talking about. Now, a lot of this money that Pat Mahomes is making is tied up in roster bonuses, which is when you actually, that date hits in March or whenever the new year league starts and you're on that roster, that's when you get that bonus money. That's why I went back to talking about Eli Manning actually being the highest grossing player in the history of the NFL with $252 million in money that he actually got in checks. Patrick Mahomes will supersede that. So it's a level of excitement that you can have as far as Patrick Mahomes being the highest paid player. But I'm with Stephen A., and I'm with you as well, Max, with Dak. This does not affect that. Listen, I want to go to even another side of this situation. Why haven't the Dallas Cowboys signed Dak Prescott? When we get to football, right? Obviously, we know Patrick Mahomes is going to be the face of the league. We talk about marketability, which I could argue that Dak's marketability will be just as magnificent if he's having success with the Dallas Cowboys in terms of what he can bring to that franchise and how much visibility he'll have anyway because of the added value of playing for the Cowboys. When you look at these particular situations and these deals and what we see Patrick Mahomes gets, this is based off the fact that Pat Mahomes is being looked at and viewed as potentially the best quarterback to ever play the game. That is how we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. So when it comes to other players, and it comes to Deshaun and Lamar with their excitability, how good they are, the success that they potentially can have, we're talking in terms of Patrick Mahomes already having a level of success that quarterbacks play 15, 20 years don't experience when we start talking about the view of a career. So this contract to me has nothing to do with Dak Prescott. We can talk about the $141 million guarantee, but I would prefer us talk about the next 4 to 5 years of how much money that actually is on this deal for Patrick Mahomes. You could advise against signing a 10-year deal, but basically go ahead, Max.
What it reminds me of Mahomes, because he didn't have to hit free agency, he didn't have to change teams, which doesn't happen in the NFL anyway, but he had years left. It reminds me of Derek Jeter. Back in the day, signed a 10-year, $189 million deal well before free agency, the kind of deal that never works out, but it worked out then because he was where he wanted to be, he was winning championships, he was a great player, and Jeter, as great as he wasn't the Patrick Mahomes of football in terms of the level he's playing at. So Mahomes in a cap league, Stephen A., Marcus, I think calculated, I don't want to break the bank. You know, I want a winning team around me, and I also don't want to have to think about where I'm headed or negotiations. And so sign this deal, making him the highest paid, making him very wealthy, but able to have a championship caliber team around him over the next decade.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.